everyone. Dr. Kell Fujimoto, Senior Director of Wellness at San Francisco Bay University, and we're doing episode 16 today and wellness relating to family planning. My guest today is Cheri Bergeron, who is a best-selling author, speaker, trained life coach, and founder of the nonprofit Cheri's Choice. Now, whether you're listening while commuting, working out, or watching while you're relaxing at home, thank you for joining me here today. If you find today's episode helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe, or share it with someone who might benefit. Sometimes one conversation can make all the difference to someone. Now, my guest today is Cheri Bergeron, a former tech executive and entrepreneur turned best-selling author, speaker, trained life coach, and founder of Cheri's Choice. Following her 10-year struggle with infertility that involved multiple rounds of IVF, donor conception, genetic defects, and child loss, she successfully became a single mother by choice at the age of 44 and 46. Driven by these experiences, Cheri wrote a #1 Amazon bestseller about her journey called Mission Motherhood, Writing a New Fairy Tale of Love and Family. And she now guides young adults to proactively plan their unique paths to parenthood with clarity, confidence, and choice. Welcome, Cheri. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks so much. No, this is really exciting for me.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're having this conversation about family planning. You have such a powerful personal story. Would you mind sharing a little bit about it and what inspired you to create Cheri's Choice?
The, when I was in my early 20s, I was determined to take the business world by storm. And I rose up the corporate ranks very quickly. But I really struggled to find the right relationship. And that was driven by a number of different things. But at 35, I started to feel this desperation because I knew I wanted to become a mother, but I thought my only path was through traditional family. And so I kind of, what I say, force fit the fairy tale, married someone kind of out of desperation versus out of true partnership. And I ended up really struggling with infertility for 10 years. And looking back, I realized that I had a number of limiting beliefs. I had a number of um, family wounds and issues that I hadn't dealt with. All of these things, and I had a lot of cultural messages that really weren't helpful to me, and those were the building blocks for my struggle. And so that's really why I started Cheri's Choice, to give young adults much more information so that they can understand that they can actually intentionally plan a path to parenthood that may look different than the norm, and that's perfectly fine. So it's really about getting more education and understanding your options a lot earlier. So that's the driving force behind the mission.
Yeah, being educated and getting more options is always a good thing for anyone, right, to have. When people think about wellness, right, they often focus on really the primary points, right, which is exercise, nutrition, stress management, all of those things, right? They may not realize that some of those activities and lifestyle choices can also affect their fertility, their future fertility, right? Can you talk a little bit about that connection?
Absolutely. I mean, we tend to think that our reproductive system is just about our sex organs and our hormones and things. But the fact is that I heard this from a fertility doctor recently, that our reproductive system is really an orchestra of our entire body, and our brain is the conductor of that system. And so all the things that we do really impact the overall wellness of our reproductive system. So you can think about sleep, for example. A lot of college students, may have a lack of sleep. Well, the fact is, if you chronically have a lack of sleep, that can interrupt your circadian rhythm, which can interrupt your reproductive hormones. It can interrupt your cycle. And so, it's not about one bad night of sleep, but it's about prolonged habits of things. Same is true with nutrition. Inadequate calories, nutritional deficiencies, high processed diets can interfere with ovulation. They can interfere with sperm health. Being significantly underweight or significantly overweight impacts that whole system. Stress, cortisone, adrenaline, these can create inflammation, they can disrupt menstrual cycles, and they can create lower sperm counts. So all of these things are connected. And, I've learned a lot about it. It's really surprising how complex our body is and how all of these decisions really affect our reproductive health.
So true. I mean, you're speaking my language here because I mean, I taught a class on the brain and the importance of the brain, right? And how that is that whole system. Our body is that system, right? And I'm actually holding some sleep labs this coming semester. So, I mean, I know the importance of sleep and how that impacts, right? I mean, so you're speaking my language. So I love that you're saying this. Many young adults assume that they have plenty of time. I mean, I know when I was younger, I'll say I won't, disclose my age, but when I was younger, I felt like I had plenty of time before I needed to think about family planning, right? But based on research and your own experience, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about fertility and reproductive health?
Yeah. Well, honestly, you have that opinion because our culture reinforces it. We are told that we have plenty of time, that we should really pursue our individual interests and our careers and get financial stability. And there's nothing wrong with all of that. The other piece is we come into adulthood having all had sex education that says, don't get pregnant, don't have an unwanted pregnancy. And there's nothing wrong with these messages. Like there's been dramatic declines in the number of teenage pregnancies. That's overall a good thing. The problem is we never get education about how to build a family and our reproductive timelines. And so a lot of us take our fertility for granted. And that's, I think,
Mhm.
where we get lulled into a false sense of security that when we're ready, all of these things are just going to fall into place. And it doesn't always work that way. We know that at the age of 30, our fertility actually starts to decline. And at 35, it declines very steeply. And honestly, from the research I've done, the only demographics that are increasing in first time children are 35 and above right now. All of the ages younger than that, the birth rate is declining for first time children. So everyone's
Hmm.
delaying until the time that it is the hardest. So, that is creating the situation where 1 in 6 adults suffer from infertility worldwide. 1 in 6. And so if you're not that person, you'll likely have a family member or a friend who's going through it. And that's really the heart behind the education I provide is to try to let people know that they can proactively do some things to safeguard their fertility and, try to avoid some of that pain that I went through.
Yeah. This makes me think, as you talked about as far as like sex education, right? And what is being taught in our schools when we're younger. Um, and there is sex education, but you're right, there's that message of don't have sex, right? And or safe sex, have safe
Yeah.
sex, right? And all of that. Do you feel like the education system is moving in a direction of having a much fuller spectrum of sex education, which also includes family planning? Or do you feel like there's we still need a lot of to work on in that area?
Oh, I think we're failing our young people in this area. And that's why I want to be bringing this information to colleges. And that's really how you and I connected. I
Yeah.
think the messages around abstinence, pregnancy avoidance, and STDs. That's really what the messages are. And so there's a huge missing conversation that's happening that says there will be a time, most people want families, not everybody, and it's not for everyone. I'm not saying everyone should be a parent, but I'm saying if you want that, then there's some things you need to know. And I just simply didn't know those things. And I think every young person deserves to understand what
Yeah.
their options are.
Yeah, good point. Excellent point. So your mission is about giving people more choices by helping them make informed decisions, as we're talking here. What are some of the healthy habits or even unhealthy behaviors that both women and men should be aware of regarding their fertility later on?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to sound like the fun police here, Kel. What I do want to say is that, prolonged exposure of smoking, vaping, marijuana use, and alcohol can all affect our reproductive systems. And I'm not saying, that you have to abstain from all of these things. I'm just saying that a prolonged habit of these kinds of things will affect your reproductive health. Beyond that, there are so many things in our environment that affect our fertility. I've learned that men's sperm count has gone down by 50% over the last number of decades.
Hmm.
And it's due to, and the other thing is, we're seeing a higher incidence of premature ovarian insufficiency. So, like not having enough eggs, and that's on the
Hmm.
rise as well. And I've been learning about all of the toxins that we have in our environment that are doing this. I mean, things that are in our makeup, things that are in our shampoos, in our candles, in our the things we ingest, pesticides in what we eat, the air we breathe. All of these things also impact it in ways. Our cookware. Another thing, our cookware,
Hmm.
things like that. And so I think there are other be a little bit more selective by buying organic or maybe having purifiers in our home or certainly take a look at the products that you buy and things that have heavy perfumes contain contains materials.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how our environment can impact us, right, in multiple ways. And um, I mean, I mean, it's amazing that you're telling me as far as like sperm count, men's sperm count and ovarians, right, and eggs for women, right, and and I think about it, and I educate students as well as far as like the behaviors of smoking and how that's not good for you health wise, right? And even in the sense of sex, right? How that impacts sex, right? And the ability to have sex and all that because it impacts your blood vessels and hardens your blood vessels and all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very important for everyone to be aware of all of the things around us, right? And how those things can impact us and change the way, we think about things. And so to be educated about that, right? So for students who are thinking about having children, who aren't thinking about having children anytime soon, um, why is it still important for them to understand their reproductive health now? I mean, we're talking about this, so maybe this is a redundant question, but how can being proactive today create more options for the future?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing is there's nothing wrong with not wanting to have a family right now, especially for those who are in college. That shouldn't be the first thing on your mind in most cases, and that's great. I think, again, the thing is that we often take our fertility for granted, and because of that, we can easily delay some of those decisions. We want to advance our career, we want to wait to meet the right person, we want to travel, we want to buy a house, and all that is great. But life can sometimes throw us some curveballs, and we may not follow the traditional. So, if you want a family, I think it's important to get really clear about that and understand what your options are. For me, I really had the beliefs of my family of origin, which were very much a traditional family. And so when life didn't unfold for me like that, I felt trapped. I thought that I had to be married to earn motherhood, and that caused me to make a bad choice. And so, if options, this generation too has more possibilities than I ever dreamed of in terms of tests to understand sperm health and fertility, fertility tests for women and egg freezing and all these different options that can really help preserve some options for you and extend your biological. I think being educated about these issues and being clear about your values truly creates empowered decisions later on in life.
Right, right. So if you could leave every college student with one piece of advice about protecting both their overall wellness and their future planning choices, what would you what would it be? What would you tell them?
I would reassure them that no matter what life throws at you, you can create the family that you want. And that it might look different from the norm, but that's okay. And you can actually plan for this with the same intention that you plan your career and your finances. And I think it really starts with being very intentional about the lifestyle decisions that you make over the long term. And you can take actions like fertility assessments to understand your baseline so that you have some kind of peace of mind. And so I'm just wanting to reassure people that even if it ends up looking different than kind of what our culture thinks is traditional, who cares? That's perfectly fine. And there are all kinds of beautiful families, and everyone deserves the opportunity to create theirs.
I love that. I love that statement. We can plan for this just as we plan other things, our career and everything. And who cares? I mean, like yeah, who is to judge that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. Okay, is there anything else you'd like our viewers to know about Cheri's Choice or any resources that can help them learn more about fertility awareness and planning for the future?
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would throw out there, something I went through, is that there are some circumstances that can delay our ability to find the right relationship and start a family. And for me, some of those were wounds from childhood. So I imagine that there are people who have come into college, the college environment, and they're like, oh my gosh, thank God I'm away from my family. They're feeling this freedom, but they're also carrying these wounds. And the thing I would encourage you to do is really, to the best of your ability, take a look at those things, especially if the parent that you had an issue with was the same as the kind of romantic partner you want. So I'm heterosexual. I had issues with my father. If you're gay, it might be with your same-sex parent. These issues, if left unaddressed, may really prevent you over time from being able to connect and find that right person and create the family you want. So I would just say that. And one of the things that I do through Cheri's Choice is provide workshops that help people get clear on their values and their priorities and see what comes up and be able to explore their options. So those are some of the kinds of, additional steps people can take.
Nice. I appreciate that. How do people reach you?
Yeah.
Where can they get more information about your book and about Cheri's Choice?
Well, the book is really about my journey. So if you want to understand what things can look like when they go kind of astray, Mission Motherhood is, some people say it's a thriller, which I didn't intend it to be, but that was my life. It can really show you why it's important to plan intentionally. That's available on Amazon. Cheri's Choice, and I think you'll provide the links in your show notes,
I
but
will.
Cheri's Choice is the nonprofit that I have a number of resources out there. And LinkedIn, if you're interested in a workshop at some point, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. I'm happy to get you information about that. And then I do have the Mission Motherhood Show, which is an ongoing podcast series about these kinds of issues. And I'm happy for you to share that link as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely put all the links in the description down below, the link to the book as well in Amazon. So thanks for sharing all of that. One last question that I'd like to ask all guests invited onto the podcast. Shri, how do you keep yourself well, and what do you do to maintain a well-balanced life?
I try to make time to get quiet and understand what I need. I have a mother, 83-year-old mother who lives with me and two young children that I am so blessed to have, but that sometimes means that I put myself on the back burner. And so I really try to listen when I'm having negative emotions to understand what am I overgiving? What am I or not giving to myself? And that helps me create a greater sense of peace. I think boundaries are so, so, so important in the relationships that we have, and they need to serve not just the people we love, but also serve us.
Well said, well said. So, Cheri, thank you so much for joining me here and for all the work that you do. I really appreciate the conversation and everything that you're doing to educate everyone regarding the options that are out there.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for spending your time with us on the Wellness Octave. If today's episode taught you something new, I'd love for you to hit the like button, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Our conversation about wellness becomes more powerful when we have them all together. Until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and your soul. Stay healthy and be well, one note at a time. Cheri, thank you again for all that you do.